Hello there, fellow YouTubers. In today's episode, I am going to share how I use Visual Studio Code to compile and run C++ programs. Please remember to hit that like button and subscribe so that you will not miss any future content. So, with that said, let's get started. Before we get started, let me just point out that all the links mentioned in this video are listed in the description below. If you don't know what Visual Studio Code is, let me tell you. It's a lightweight code editor. It's built by Microsoft. It is not a full IDE, but it is highly extensible through the use of plugins, which means that you can use it sort of like an IDE. One big advantage is the debugging aspect. There are ways to debug, and I plan to show you that in an upcoming video. For now, let's just set it up, compile our first program, and run it. After that, we will dive into the different setup options for compiling. So first, to get Visual Studio Code, you must download it from their official website. It is at code.visualstudio.com/download. And remember, the link is down below. You must find the version that you need depending on your operating system. Visual Code supports Windows, Mac OS, and several flavors of Linux. I know that's exciting. It was exciting when I first found out that it supported all these versions, because now it doesn't matter if you run whatever computer, whatever operating system you choose to use, you can run it in all those systems. So you can say goodbye to some of the other paid versions that you have to use, like Storm and I don't know, just other IDs that you have to use in these other systems that sometimes you have to pay for. Well, Visual Studio Code is totally 100% free, and you can use it in any of those, and it works really great. Once you find the one that you need, download it and install it. Depending on the operating system, there may be different instructions, so you'll have to follow those instructions to set it up. For Windows, very simple, just run the executable and you should be fine. So, to install it, you just have to go to the Visual Studio website here and install it. Once you get it installed, then you should have Visual Studio in your programs. If you don't have it in your Windows programs, you may have to search a little bit deeper and find it and then execute it. I like to add it to my taskbar. I use Windows, so I add it to my taskbar and then I can run it. So once you do, you will have Visual Studio Code. Remember, don't get it mixed up with Visual Studio, because it's Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a whole different thing, and it's a whole IDE. Don't get it mixed up. This is Visual Studio Code, which is in addition to Visual Studio. Visual Studio has its purposes. Visual Studio Code has different purposes. It's not a full IDE, so make sure you get the right one. So now that you have Visual Studio Code, as you can see, I already have it open with README that has nothing in it. And really, you can use it for any files and folders. Here, you can see that I can open up a folder. In this case, I already have a folder for my, whatever I want to open. So then, in this case, VS Code Demo, I would open that, select the folder, and I have that. So I can add files here. I have add a new file, or I can add even a folder. Let's say that I wanted to set my H files, say I wanted my headers there and my source separate. Well, I could do that, but that's up to you. I'm going to delete this because I don't want that. Yes, move to the recycle bin. So I am also, there is a plugins, which my Visual Studio has increased so much here that you probably cannot see it, but there is a plugins, or as they call them, extensions to Visual Studio. So you will want to install the ones for C++, and you can already see that I have some of these, and in my case they're installed. In your case they're not installed, so go ahead and install them. Once they're installed, it'll have the option to disable or uninstall. You can read all about what they do and what their purposes are. For the most part, they give you IntelliSense. You don't necessarily need it, But a lot of times, Visual Studio will automatically detect that you are working with C++, and it will actually recommend to do that. And of course, there's many others, there's runners, compilers, and all these other different things. You can experiment that on your own. I just like to use C++ and the extension pack, and that's really all I need. Once you have those plugins installed, um, you can then proceed uh, to download the C++ compiler. Remember, this is not a compiler, so it doesn't have a compiler. So now with Windows, you actually have the subsystem for Linux, the Windows subsystem for Linux that you can use and download, and you can install things that way. Install the G++, however you do it. But in my case with Windows, I install um, the C++ compiler. Like I said, the link is down below, and I just use G++. So with that said, now we have everything we need to compile and run C++ program. So let's create a simple file, C++ program. We'll call it main.cpp, and in it we include IOStream, as is very common, and using we want to use std endo, using std cout. What else do we need from it? I think that's all we need. Endo and cout. Okay, and then we create our main. With that program written, now you notice that in Visual Studio I have this little 1 here. That means that my file down saved. And I can go up here and say click save, or I can use the Control S to save, or Control Shift S to save as, or Control plus K S in order to save everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and save it, and that will disappear. So now I have saved it. So now what I want to do is I want to open up a terminal. I open up a new terminal. Okay, this terminal is kind of big, taking up over all my real estate area. So let's bring it down just a little bit so I can still see my program. And you have the options to use different terminals. So I don't personally like to use PowerShell. I like to use Ubuntu, and so I select that terminal. Let's hide this so we can make this give it a little bit of room. And so now I am there. Okay, now to compile C++, like I say, you need a compiler. You can see that I have G++. You can also say G++ -version to see what version you have. And I have it installed on Ubuntu. So what I can do at this point, I can issue the command to compile. I like to say that I am going to use C++, C++11, and then I give it my parameter -o, and then this is where the name of the executable. You can name your executable whatever you want. Typically in Linux, you don't give it a .exe. In Windows, we do use exes. It just, what do you do, right? So I like to call them as simple names a lot of times while I'm working, like P1. So I'm just going to compile that and see if it compiles. I might get errors. Let's see. Oh, it didn't have any errors. Now to run it, /P1, and that's going to run the program P1. And you see that it says hello world. So there, we have our first program. It's running. So what if we wanted to compile more than that, right? So let's say that we compile a class. Let's create a class really quickly. So now, as you watch me, I created the person H file that has everything it needs to create a person class. Hopefully we got it right. And then we have the person.cpp file, which has the implementation details of that class. So with that, now we have separate CPP files. We have a header file, we have a CPP, and then we have another main CPP, and we included that from our main file. So with that, now we should be able to compile all this and make it work. Now I may have errors, so let's go ahead and save everything. Okay, there's a file that's not saved, obviously somewhere. So let's see if this is saved. Okay, that wasn't saved. Okay, so now with that said, this is asking me to install CLang. Let's ignore that for now. So now we can actually compile. Now at this point, the compiling, let's close this so we can actually see more of the command line. So we can take and use the old command, but now we have additional files. So one thing we can do is we can say main CPP and then of course person CPP. I'm going to put person CPP and main CPP. The header files do not compile. You just include them from other H files, but you do not compile them. Notice I have person CPP and main CPP. I can do it that way and it'll compile fine. And let's see if we get any errors. It compiles fine. I should be able to run P1. Hello, John Doe. Okay. Or the other option is that I can take and run that command and I can simply compile everything. Now this may be dangerous if you compile everything because you may have different mains or tests or different things. So you may not want to do that. But what you may want to do is separate them by folders. Maybe in one folder you have one main and another one you have a different main and you do it. So it's just all a matter. But if I say star.cpp, it will compile everything and it will do the same thing. And matter of fact, let's give it a different name just so you know that it's not the old file. We'll call this P2 and now the executable will be P2. It compiles and let's go ahead and run it, but we'll run P2 this time and same thing, John Doe. So there you have it. You have a way to compile Visual Studio, and this will work in any system, whether it's Mac OS, Linux, or Windows, and you have everything you need. Please remember to click like if you found this video useful, and click subscribe if you want to get to follow-up videos, because I do plan to create a video on how to debug, and I want to create another video on how to find bugs in your C++ code using this awesome tool. Thanks for watching.